I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Rambling Man Podcast episode number 128. This one's with Leslie Ann Ellingburg, who's been on once before, but this time she is on to talk about her abortion story. So a little forewarning on the episode. We start out as we normally do here on Rambling Man, and a little goofy and, just easing into the conversation, and then she kind of tells her story straight through. I tried to not interrupt as much as possible. There were a few moments where I just want a little bit of clarification, like which city she was in. But I appreciate her coming on and telling her story. I think it's good to have more people tell their story because of what we're going through in the world right now. She has also launched a Patreon called The Girl with the Big Blue Hair, and it's a mix of podcasts and dance instruction, tarot readings, all kinds of things. If you'd like to learn more about that and support Leslie, you can go to patreon.com/girlwiththebigBluehair. You can also find her on Instagram. Same thing, instagram.com/girlwiththebigBluehair. I appreciate her being on. Make sure you go and back her Patreon, follow her on Instagram. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode. So what is yours? What is your favorite soup?
I really love tomato.
Okay.
I'm basic, but I love soup. I do. I tend to like chili a little bit more, but I love a good tomato soup.
Okay.
That's a big bachelorette Leslie dinner, tomato soup and frozen chicken tenders, because I am a gourmet cook. Actually, I really know how to cook, but like when I was living by myself before I moved out here, when it's just one person,
Yeah.
it's so hard. I lost my love of cooking when it was just me, because so I just lived on frozen chicken tenders and tomato soup.
So that's me. I bulk cook, and I would say 85% of my meals throughout the year are, chicken, corn, and peas, and some sort of Oreo for dessert. That's 85% of my meals.
Yeah, like it's funny. A lot of my single dude friends, we all joke, and it's weird because I'm also like looped in because I'm like the random like single female in this group. But a lot of my single male friends, we all joke that it's like single people's food is frozen chicken tenders, a frozen fry of sorts. I don't eat these because I'm allergic to it, but pizza rolls.
Yeah.
And either Stouffer's lasagna. Tyler's favorite is Stouffer's fettuccine.
He's a man of means.
Right? So, but it's funny, like all the single dudes I know, we all eat kind of the same. And it's like, but it's so easy.
So here's my hot tip. Tyson's Southern breast tenderloins. The breading kind of tastes about, I'm going to use the number 85% again. 85% close to what KFC's skin tastes like.
Oh,
It's
well, see,
good.
I'm gluten free, so I
Oh,
don't know what regular fried chicken tastes like because even before my gluten free days, I was, highly orthorexic and eating disordered. So I just did not eat fried chicken like the
yeah.
bad southerner I am. Um, so I don't know what fried chicken really tastes like anymore.
That's the one thing. Those and chicken wings are ones that I'm like, every once in a while it gives me the shivers that I'm eating them because you tell what it is, and it's just like I know what this is, and it's grossing me out. I'm still gonna
Yeah.
eat it, but yeah. Oh my god. Okay. So you've been on before, but we're gonna ask some questions for any new listeners and for your podcast listeners. Uh, where are you originally from?
I am originally from Tennessee, Johnson City to be exact. When I tell people where I'm from, I tell them the Old Crow Medicine Show song, but just go in the opposite direction because the direction is wrong. I also say the land of Dolly and Bristol Motor Speedway. It's Bristol, baby. Surely to goodness, people know those geographical locations. I had to get a little bit more specific when I moved out of the state because when you say Tennessee, like people automatically think Nashville or Memphis. And I'm like, nope, there's a third area, the best area, but bias. So I'm originally from Johnson City, Tennessee. I moved around a lot as a child and as an adult. I did as well too. Mainly when I got married, I moved around a lot more. And even as a single person, I've moved a lot. I don't know what being in one place is like.
Yeah. So in growing up in Johnson's, here's the city boy in me from Knoxville, the big city, the big city. Uh, so Johnson City, that was a fairly Christian or conservative environment, correct?
Yes. So I think like most southern states, it's all highly Bible belty. I don't think no matter where you are in the South, I don't think you can go anywhere without seeing a church every 50 feet. I feel like it's also part of our culture, whether or not we subscribe and are part of, like, say we're spiritual or religious. I still found a lot of people still have that part of them because it's just so deeply ingrained in our culture, especially in like mountain culture and stuff as well. So I think it's just part of life, whether we mean for it
Yeah.
to be or not.
And so did you grow up in the church, going to church?
I did. I grew up Southern Baptist. Yeah.
Wait, was it?
Hesitation in that.
I was going to say Southern Baptist, but from being from here, I know their difference. They're the Southern Baptists that put on their best bib and tucker every Sunday morning, and then there are the Southern Baptists that there was a bass player and a guitar player and a drummer, and there were a lot of shaking hands and singing along. So which form of Baptist were you?
So there's free will, missionary, Southern, and independent Baptist, and we are all each very different and have a different doctrine. It's similar but different. So I grew up Southern Baptist, super conservative. I grew up in the 90s, so I grew up in highly evangelical time, that resurgence of evangelicalism, and then also the height of purity culture. So a lot of people probably, if you're from that generation and you are a female, you're probably very well aware of True Love Waits and the horribleness that exposed us to as children, even though we didn't know it was horrible, because I think a lot of us were very indoctrinated and brainwashed at a time during that time, right? You grow up in it and that's all you know. And you're just exposed to this rhetoric. which I will be talking about this in depth on my own podcast. My man friend and I will be talking about it. Some of my girlfriends are going to be talking about it because we have all left the church and deconstructed or found a new faith, and just kind of how a lot of that rhetoric during this time affected our lives, and we didn't know it till we were married.
Right.
Are faced with certain situations. So I feel like it's a very complicated thing. I know for me, my whole family is very churchy. My parents held positions of power in the church. So did my grandparents. And with that comes, I don't want to say decorum, but a certain expectation. Right. So you have that level of expectation of being held to a different standard because who your parents are, as well as having this indoctrination of these things. And then growing up, I was always very inquisitive and kind of pushy backy. Surprise there. I love to ask questions when things didn't make sense.
Right.
And I would ask a lot of questions. I'd be like, I don't think this makes sense. And I always got shut down, or kind of told I wasn't a good Christian. I wasn't Christian enough. I mean, I remember one time I had a youth minister say that I wasn't a good Christian because I listened to Queen and Elton John and a bunch of gay artists. So I was a bad Christian. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? But a lot of these things that you're just told and you get mixed signals. And then when you are, as a female, you're kind of in this whole like cover your body because your body is shameful. Yet, we had to wear t-shirts to pool parties, but the guys could be in swim trunks.
Yeah.
There was always a big hypocrisy and in how men were treated, how women were treated in youth groups. And anytime any of us women would push back, we would get in trouble or kind of get like, well, that's just not becoming or whatever. The Bible says this, blah, blah, blah. And this stuff was used against you and kind of to gaslight you and bypass you. So I inherited a lot of church trauma.
Yeah, kind of. I'm saying this as they're not saying me saying this, but like knowing your place, knowing your role, not overstepping your bounds.
Oh, 100%.
As a woman.
100%. And then like, I didn't know a lot of the stuff would feed into my marriage, and it did. Yeah. I didn't really know that till I started to leave the church and started to deconstruct and started thinking about what do I really believe? Who is Leslie as a person? And started doing, the work. And I was like, the veil was lifted. And I was like, oh gosh. But yeah, so it wasn't always the best, being exposed to things. And I will mention True Love Waits a few more times. I think we may get to that and some of the loveliness that it exposed me to that will tie into the story we're going to be talking about later. But I am going to be talking a lot about that on my other podcast on my own.
In all that, was sex seen as something you didn't talk about, you didn't learn about, you didn't know anything about? It was like, no, just wait till you're married, without any knowledge of actually what that is.
It's so bad. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so bad. Like, it was pretty much sex does not exist. Sex is bad. If you have sex before you're married, you are bad. You've ruined your marriage. For females, it was very much like you become worthless. I know there's been the piece of gum analogy that a lot of people got used. Like, who wants a chewed up piece of gum? I had a friend who was exposed to that But you got some form of you were used goods, and that won't bless your marriage, and that you had to be pure for marriage. Yeah, so no. And then I remember in True Love Waits one time, um, I always call it like the scene in Mean Girls where they're in the gym and the guy is like, don't have sex, you will get pregnant and die. I legit heard that. Not that you'll die part, but the whole like,
Oh, yeah.
you have sex, you'll get an STD and it'll look like this. And they will show you the absolute worst pictures, like they pull from an anatomy book of like STDs and STIs. And like, this will happen to you if you have sex, to scare you not to have it. So instead of talking about like sex is natural, men and women both have sexual urges, here's how to be safe about it, here's what to do about it, you know, be mature when you make this decision, when you decide to engage in it, right? And be mature and responsible. None of that was taught. It was like scare tactics to keep you from having sex, which was always so funny because my youth group was a very highly sexually active youth group.
Of course they were. Of course.
And so it was just really, really funny that they would make these pledges. I'm like, I know that y'all are sleeping with each other or other people. But yeah, so it was just very much very shamey. And then you're supposed to like not have sex. And then when you get married, have all the sex.
Yeah. Well,
and
to have babies, because it has to have a result. It can't be for fun. Come on now.
I guess, I don't know. Like, but yeah, for the most part, it was very much like no sex and then get married, have lots of sex, and your marriage will be blessed. And then you have my situation where sex was painful and horrible and I was traumatized and it plagued me my whole marriage, which I'm also going to talk about on my podcast as well.
Okay.
Because that was very shamey as well too, when like you couldn't have sex and you were told that like if you waited, your marriage would be blessed and sex would be great. And I was like, this is not great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's very there's a lot to unpack, and I'm sure anyone who's gone through it has heard that stuff. But yeah, you're just pretty much told sex is bad, don't do it, you will get pregnant, or like you'll get an STI, STD, you're trash, all sorts of horrible things. And then if you do it, repent, become a second-time virgin, and your marriage will be blessed. Second-time virgins were actually told to me. How stupid is that? But anyways, like
I will not repeat, but there is a dude I used to work with who was pervy, said all the dirty, I'm on air quotes, locker room talk. And anytime anybody says something like that to me, I think about what he said, which cannot be repeated because it's so disgusting. But it's just like, yeah, they just told the PG version of that. Like my friend's a dirty idiot, but they believed in the same thing, just the PG or the G is in the God version of that.
Yeah, my parents didn't talk about it either. Like my parents did not talk about sex at all. Growing up in Tennessee, your sex education is just don't have sex.
No. Even our health coach was the baseball coach, and he didn't tell us shit. I think we had one class, and he made it like 5 minutes in. He was like, nope.
Yeah, mine was the gym coach as well. And it literally was just like one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you're not setting anyone up for success. I wasn't set up for success. It's just a bad time. It was a bad time. Yeah. And, when you just repeatedly have heard these things all your life, that any of these sins that you do, and I kind of feel like there's like few major sins in the church, or at least in how I was growing up, some sins were bigger than others and like are worse than others. And,
God.
I'm someone who has committed a few of them. So like, but yeah, so I think, when you've grown up, geez, from the time I kind of stopped going to church in my mid-20s. So for over half my life,
Yeah.
even though I didn't believe some of the stuff I was told as I started to grow up, and I fought it. And I was like, I don't think what you're saying is right. But still, you've been told all this stuff. It's ingrained in you so deeply that it's when hard things come or you make certain decisions, even though you as a person and you know that like you're making the right decision, there's nothing wrong with it. You're battling that other part of you.
Yeah.
That you may not believe and subscribe to, but it's still there. Like that little, like a little itch that you can't scratch and you just want to get rid of it. And it's always there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get married, or here's something I forgot to ask in the prelim going up to this. So abortion is the topic today.
It is everyone's favorite topic.
Yes. So was that before, or did yours I'm going to let you roll into your story, but my question is, was it before you got married or after you got married when that happened?
After I left my husband.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it was even after that. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
So, man. Okay. So,
it'll be 2 years in October if we want to get like super specific with it.
Okay.
I still know those dates. Well, the first one I had to have two because the first one didn't work. So, but like the first one was in October.
That is something, was it TIL? I did not realize that you could go in and it could not work.
Yeah. And that's something I'm definitely going to talk about when I share my story. It's very rare that happens.
How about we go ahead? Let's go ahead and start the story.
Let's start it. Yeah, so I'm just going to preface this. We may need to insert a trigger warning, but just this is the first time I've shared my full story publicly.
Okay.
I've only really probably told maybe less than I can count on both hands.
Okay.
People that know. A few wasn't by choice. Honestly, if I had it my way, probably no one would have known, but things happen. I'm a very private person. And especially when it came to this, because I felt very shameful because, if you know me in real life, you would never expect something like this to happen. But yeah, so just I just have felt like part of my healing journey and healing process was to write out my story and share it. Kind of like I do when I talk about my eating disorder and my body dysmorphia and things of that nature, just kind of talk about what I experienced. And then maybe one or two other people, even if it's just one person, is like, oh, that resonated with me. So it's kind of like, this is helping me do my healing work. And then also maybe I can get someone else to kind of start their own healing journey or inspire them or be a safe person for them to talk to. But yeah, so I guess I'll begin. I'm going to get really awkward and really nervous. And for those who cannot see this, because there's no video recording, I am reading off a paper. I typed out my narrative. It's kind of like, I'm kind of structuring like how I'm going to do my own podcast where I have people write their narrative and then we discuss about it so people can really
it's the magic of podcasts. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
you're just pulling this all off the dome. This straight from the gut.
But because I feel like another reason I wanted to write and share a narrative was that sometimes you can really put into words and have that control more than just asking those interview questions. I can really express the whole shebang.
Right.
But yeah,
Sorry,
okay. So,
sorry for keep coughing. It's every once in a while I was like, I'm trying to cough as far off mic as
we'll
humanly.
just edit it out,
Yeah.
right? We'll put
Yeah.
a little twinkle noise or something. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking and be serious about it. But yeah, also, so just be mindful that I do go into detail about some things that may make people uncomfortable. Yeah, just be kind of aware that that may happen, because I am not trying to gloss over things. But yes, okay, so on with it. Here I go. Oh, I'm so sorry that I did that. It's absolutely horrible that I coughed into a microphone. I swear I'm a professional.
Again, magic. No one will know.
Okay, so here we go. They say everybody loves someone who's had an abortion. 1 in 4 cis women have had one. Sometimes it is the person who you would never expect that has had one. That person is me. I am the person that you love who's had an abortion. While I live pretty openly about my life and speak about a lot of things that have shaped me, like my eating disorder, my struggles with body dysmorphia, my divorce, this was an experience that I don't talk about or haven't really talked about. I can count on one hand, maybe two, the people who know this. I am telling my story because I know I'm not the only one who has been in this situation. I'm not the only one who had to fight their Christian upbringing and the ugly voices in their head that tells them that they are going to hell. I'm not the only one who has felt shame and guilt, but are happy that they made the choice. I'm not the only one who has dealt with the aftermath of this, the mental mindfuck, the physical healing, and the trauma that occurs. I am not the only one who's had to dive deep into the abyss of the loneliness that occurs afterwards. I'm not the only one who had to do this pretty much by themselves, keeping it a secret for a fear of being exiled and excommunicated from family. I am not the only one who was left abandoned by the person who so-called, air quotes, loves them. I want to share my story because I want to give hope to those who may feel like they're at the bottom, they are alone, they feel like a burden, or they're somewhere in the middle of being happy that they chose to abort and yet have a longing that they wish they could hold something in their arms. But one element of my story that makes mine different that I want to touch on is the fact that one abortion turned into 2. But we'll get to that later. It was like an opening of A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the best of times because I had chosen to live my life. I left my husband, and for the first time in my life, I was doing everything for me and experiencing the life that I had missed due to being married for 10 years. I felt like I was in my 20s again. It was also the worst of times because it was height of coronavirus, a time that didn't make sense. It was a different world. No one knew what to do, and we were just trying to find some sense of normalcy. It is a moment in time that cannot be replicated. And if you're like me, you are just now processing the fuckery of 2020. That summer, I was feeling myself. I dyed my hair blue. I was staying up late. I was reclaiming my sexuality, finally having good sex, and was wrapped up in the romance of a boy that I had been chasing my whole entire life. It seemed like the timing was on our side for the first time in our lives. We were in the middle of what I thought was the beginnings of an epic romance and a story that could make headlines. We tried to keep it a secret, but we deep down knew that everyone knew that something was going on because when we were together, we always caused a commotion. I would cross the mountain to come visit him. He became my safe place. I was an emotional hot mess as I had just divorced my husband, but he was there by my side, helping me navigate these waters as he himself was doing the same thing because his fiance had just left him, and we were there for each other. However, it wasn't all car rides at sunsets and motorcycle rides. There was always a push and pull of him pushing me away, then grabbing me back as I would go date someone else. There were I love you exchanges in the dark as moonlight would shine on us and love gleamed in our eyes. There was tears because it would never fully be true. I go into this because this sets up the inner working for the messiness and the huge overarching theme that plays out over the course of my story. And if you've been in a manipulative, breadcrumbing, love bombing relationship, you can definitely know where I'm coming from. One of the weekends, I went over to his house and we had lots of sex. And you can kind of infer what happened. As the days passed on, I could tell something was off. I'm creepily connected to my body, blame it on 20 plus years of ballet and being hypersensitive to my body. I started to get sick, but honestly, it felt like I was having a gastroparesis flare up, and I was used to living in a state of constant nausea and throwing things up all the time, because that's what gastroparesis is. It's where your stomach, you have delayed stomach emptying, so food doesn't digest quickly and it sits there and you throw up. So that's happened to me all the time. And I lived with it for years, so I didn't think anything was off. Then it turned into what I thought was a cold, or hashtag summer allergies, because it's the South and we get allergies in the summer. But then I was like, I don't think this is a cold. And something is wrong. Something's not right. So I wake up and I go to the Walgreens down the road. I went to the one near my house. It was the 24-hour one. And it was like 7:00 in the morning. And it was just me and the guy who worked the cash register. I had to be in a virtual work meeting at 8. So I had to get in and get out. I bought a pregnancy test, pads, and gum, trying to gloss over the fact that I was buying a pregnancy test. So I had to buy pads and gum. You know, it is what it is. As the cashier is handing me my receipt, he says, I hope everything turns out. Mortified, I about cry, and I grab it and rush out of the store. I get home and I wait the 3 longest minutes of my life. Side note, always get digital tests. I don't know why people get the ones that are just the plus and the minus. Get the ones that say pregnant or not pregnant. Clear Blue is the best brand. Yes.
The question I have is, this is in Johnson City?
No, this is when I lived in Winston.
Okay, this is when you lived in Winston. Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't moved back to Johnson City yet.
Okay. The small town in me is like, holy hell, does the person at the Walgreens or the CVS know your parents? Like, that's where my brain is going. I'm trying not to interrupt, but that was exactly what I was thinking about.
I have a story about when I did move back.
Okay.
Gets into, okay. I got something that we'll tell along with that later. But no, I lived in Winston at the time. I hadn't moved back to Johnson City.
Okay.
Yeah. So get the Clear Blue test. The ones that say pregnant, not pregnant, they more expensive, but it saves you from second guessing. This is not a paid endorsement. I get no money. I'm just someone who bought a lot of pregnancy tests. I'll get into that later as well. But yes, so in my bathroom, 3 minutes is up. I saw those dreaded words, pregnant. Nothing in the world prepares you for that moment. My body literally sank, and I swear my soul left my body for a brief moment. I am standing there fighting back tears as I got to be on a work call in 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was getting an abortion. There was no other option. I get on my work call, and the moment I get off, I text my person, who I'll call Lord Voldemort from now on, as that is the generic name I give all the guys who have abused me, stalked me, done me dirty, or did me wrong. They're all called Lord Voldemorts. And I text him, when you get home or have a moment, we need to talk. He FaceTimed me, which was unusual but welcome, as I hoped to see his face when I told him the news. I told him I was pregnant. His face was in shock. And the first thing he said was, why didn't you take plan B? I can't believe this. And I said, you told me not to worry about it, and I 100% trusted you. To which he replied, you shouldn't have trusted me. I had been drinking earlier. And this talk did not help me, as I was already beginning to feel the shame and embarrassment. I'm the most put together person you'll meet. And if you know, you know. I'm a Virgo rising, an Enneagram type 3. I cross every T, dot every I. It's all about presentation. And again, those who know me in real life know that, like, buttoned up. And I don't take risk, but it was in that moment of weakness when I was with him, also living fully in a trauma brain. And if we're really honest, when you are with someone and you have copious amounts of sex every time you're together, your odds are not good, even if you use protection. And we were like rabbits. But you know, it is. He then asked me what I was going to do, which I abruptly said, get an abortion. There's a Planned Parenthood a fourth of a mile down from my house. I can walk to it. He couldn't believe he said I was getting one, as I grew up very Southern Baptist and evangelical. But he supported me, told me he would pay for it, and he sent me the money. For that, I was thankful because I had no money to my name. None. I had a part-time job that was hanging on from a thread because I work in the fitness industry during work from home times. And at this time, I didn't know that there was such a thing about abortion funds and how to find money for an abortion. So that day, I called Planned Parenthood, and in the state of North Carolina, you make a consultation appointment. They go over all your options, keeping it, adoption, and the different types of abortions that you can choose from. If you like to have an abortion, you choose the one that you want, and they put you on a schedule 48 hours or more when the schedule allows. We have to wait 2 full days at minimum after your phone call. I went on that week like life was normal. No one knew. I had a photo shoot with my bestie that weekend. I even went on a few dates with this new guy that I had been introduced to. Funny story, my best friend saw my health calendar where I document all of my health issues, like my POTS symptoms, my gastroparesis flare-ups, when I have my period, when I have sex, because, you know, again, document everything. And she said, wow, you and Lord Voldemort are having lots of sex. I hope you all are using protection. And my heart sank. But I had to buck it up and act like nothing was wrong. And typical Leslie fashion, I made a joke about it and brushed it off like nothing was wrong, because no one could know that I was pregnant, because what would people think of me? How disappointed would my friends be in me? I mean, hell, I was vastly disappointed in myself. The day came. It was a Friday. I worked half a day, drove myself down the road to the Planned Parenthood. I had been down that road a bunch of times. I had seen the protesters holding their signs across the street, but it hits differently when it's you driving through the protesters. When those signs that say murderer, God loves you and your baby, turn around and make the right choice is directed at you. Those signs brought to life the inner Christian evangelical voice and spoke a kind of shame and guilt into existence that I had never felt before. I did feel a bit of a shame asking for a divorce and having the power and courage to leave my husband, and divorce isn't held in very high regard in the church. But what I was about to do is considered one of the biggest sins in the church. Yes. Oh, okay. Keep going. Even though I don't believe abortion is a sin, and I have a long time stepped away from the church, it was very hard to quit that voice and the critic that was ingrained and indoctrinated into me. I walked in those doors, signed my paperwork, paid, and the wait began. It was a long wait, and I began to get nervous. I really just wanted this to be over. I wanted those pills and for all of this to go away. Eventually, I was brought back to do my ultrasound. The tech was so nice, and we chatted. She calmed my nerves. However, when she asked if I wanted to see the ultrasound, I was taken aback. Why would I want to see it? I don't want to see it. What is there to see? I was barely 6 weeks. So even if I would have seen it, it would have just been a little clump of cells. I won't lie. A part of me really wanted to see the ultrasound, but I knew that if I was to see the ultrasound, my guilt would have taken over and I would have done a double take decision. After my ultrasound, I had to wait again till the doctor came for me. I had elected to do the medicated abortion, where you take one pill in the office and then 24 hours later, you take some other doses, and you either take your doses orally or vaginally. The doctor did tell me that the medicated abortions are 98% effective, and in 2 weeks, I am to come back for another ultrasound to make sure that everything was expelled. And I didn't write this down, but I just kind of went back into that room, and I hadn't gone back into that room mentally in a while, but I do remember she was super nice. And we sit across each other from a desk, and there was one of those little, like, I call them the fluoride cups because I grew up in an area in North Carolina with the bubble gum fluoride.
Oh, yeah.
The swish, but it was in a little swish cup, and there was the pill, and she gave me the sheet facts and everything about aftercare and what to do in case something happened, what hospital I could go to. And where it would be okay for me to go to, because not all hospitals would help out if something happened with the medicated abortion. But where I could go.
Could I ask, like, so for like here, like when Baptist Hospital was a thing or St. Mary's, because they were Christian-based hospitals, they wouldn't help you, but maybe somewhere like UT. Does that make sense? Is that the thought process in which hospitals would and which hospitals wouldn't?
So that I'm not sure. I just know it is where she practiced at.
Okay.
So it was kind of where she worked at Planned Parenthood on this side.
Okay.
But she worked in a hospital full time. So it'd be where she would be, where she was affiliated at.
And it could be somebody knowledgeable on staff of what to do. Some hospitals have that and some don't. Could be
right.
That too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't speak to clearly that. I just know it's where she was affiliated.
Being from down here, of course, that's a like a bullet. That's exactly where my mind goes. It's like, oh, because they're Christian hospitals.
Yeah. So Winston-Salem, Wake Forest, and Novant. Well, now Wake Forest is now Atrium. Neither of those were Christian affiliated or had no religious affiliation.
Okay.
But I believe, if I remember correctly, I could have gone to Novant, I believe. But yeah, so that's how that worked for me. But yeah, I took that pill out of that swish cup, chugged that water, and I was like, I'm doing it. Here we go. And then, yeah. So that was a little sidebar. I totally hadn't been back in that. That's not one room of Planned Parenthood that I have visually gone back to. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of can't believe that came up. But yeah, I just remember her being so nice, and everyone there is so friendly to me. Okay. Yes. I'm going to try not to cry during this.
You're doing great. Great.
Okay. So the cramps came pretty quickly for me, and I began to start bleeding by dinner time. But in typical Leslie fashion, I had created a nice atmosphere, made dinner, and tried my best to create good vibes for when Lord Voldemort came to spend the weekend with me. I may be bleeding and having an abortion, but damn it, I'm going to be a good hostess. Yet there was a huge heaviness over the weekend, which was, I didn't know then, but a foreshadow of things to come. It felt good to be in his arms and feel supported. He made sure we had some fun and spent some quality time together on Saturday before I had to take the second pill. We grabbed a coffee at my favorite coffee shop, and I started to cry and break down. I cried in public Not, oh, I was so embarrassed to cry in public because your girl does not cry. Shove those emotions down with the squish squasher. But anyways, I was a mixture of emotions when we got back to my house. I remember laying on my bed and the tears got even bigger. And soon I was just swimming in a sea of salt water. Swallowing that pill was difficult, and all I could do was just lay there. I was pretty much paralyzed, hoping that with every sip of water I took to get these pills down, that this would all be over and everything would come out, that I would never have to go through this again, that I could move on. He could move on. We could move on together and drive off into the sunset. That evening, I could barely walk. He had to walk me to my shower. As I was showering, massive blood clots were coming out. I'm standing there, barely able to clean myself between the tears and the state of shock. I've never seen so much blood in my life. Well, there was one time when I worked at the urgent care, I did see a whole bunch of blood when I checked a patient in, but it's not the same. After dinner, I took my shower. He told me that he was leaving to go back home. And I was like, you can't leave me alone tonight. Please stay with me. Tell your house sitter that you need to stay an extra night and just leave early Sunday morning. I need you. I can't and don't need to be by myself tonight. And why didn't you plan accordingly? You knew that this was a whole weekend ordeal. He stayed with me that night, but at 6 a.m. Sunday morning, he was up and out, and nothing was ever the same. A week or so later, I came over to visit. Everything seemed okay. He had bought me flowers for the first time and was very attentive. But anytime I tried to talk about what had happened the weekend before and asked how he was doing with everything, he would shut down. I got triggered at a party we went to because everyone had babies, and seeing him holding babies and being so happy, I lost it. I remember actually going into the bathroom and trying not to cry, but I didn't have the courage or the balls to say, hey, let's leave, because he was having fun, and I'm not the kind of person to like stop someone from having fun. I wasn't very, now I would be like, we're leaving or I'm leaving. I have a lot more boldness now, but then I was still stuck in my, I don't want to make a scene. I did that in my marriage a lot too. I don't want to make a scene. I'm not going to stop someone else from having fun, even though I'm highly uncomfortable. But there he was holding babies and smiling and seeing him so happy that I lost it. I cried in my car. Not a good look, but you know, again, it is what it is. He comforted me that night and told me that it would be okay. When I returned back, I had my follow-up ultrasound. Again, the tech was super nice and we had a good conversation. Then all of a sudden, they stopped talking, which is never a good sign when your tech stops talking. I've been in enough doctor offices and I've had enough procedures done that I know this. The tech delivered the news. My medicated abortion didn't take. I had to come back and get a DNC, which is the surgical abortion, to get rid of all the embryonic remains. My heart sank. I was in such disbelief. How could this not work? I did everything correctly. I read and reread those instructions. Lord Voldemort even read them again for me multiple times. Then the obsessive thoughts came flooding in. Did I not dissolve the pills enough? Would have been better if I would have taken the second round of pills vaginally. But I just really could not touch anything out there this weekend. Why did this happen to me? I just want this to be over. I then went home and took a walk through my beautiful neighborhood, hoping I could calm down and regulate my nervous system. I proceeded to call Lord Voldemort And through my tears, I tell him the news that I had to go in for another procedure in a few days. I remember saying out loud, I am such a failure. I couldn't be a good wife. I wasn't good at being married. I can't even get an abortion right. Maybe this is a sign from God that I am damned and he is tormenting me because I committed this air quote sin. He told me that I wasn't a failure and again, I'll be okay. As he said that, I turned the corner and I saw this anti-abortion sign in this yard and I just fell down on my knees. And again, I asked him if he could come this weekend and be with me again. He said no, he was busy and couldn't take time off work. I pleaded. I didn't want to be alone. I had no one. He told me to get in touch with my bestie and let her know. And I said, I can't. No one but you knows about this. Side note, he told people more than I did. Right? I said, I need you. And again, he said no, and I'd have to do it myself. Well, that day came, and again, I drove myself to Planned Parenthood through the sea of protesters. Kind of sounds like that thing from Elf, the sea of swirly, twirly gumdrops. But
if only.
Yeah. Sorry to make a joke about that, but gotta lighten it up a little bit. And I went back for my DNC. There I was again in a place I was becoming too familiar with, a routine I didn't imagine being known. Arrive, paperwork, waiting room, ultrasound, wait again, procedure. This time, however, I was not prepared for what was about to happen. I go from waiting room 1 to waiting room 2, and then I was walked back into the surgical room. The nurses were so kind to me, and you can tell that they sensed the apprehension and my fear. I was instructed to lay down. The doctor took me through each step and thoroughly explained every step of the procedure and what they were going to do. She asked if I was ready, and I said, yeah, I guess so. I mean, you're never ready for an abortion, but here I am. The whole procedure only lasted about 5 to 10 minutes. Mine was pretty short as most of the embryonic stuff was gone, but those minutes felt like an eternity. There really are no words to describe the sensation of this procedure. It's way more of a physiological sensation, which still to this day I can feel on occasion. It's gotten a lot less over the 2 years, but sometimes I still feel that sensation. And let's see, where am I on my story? Yes. So it's a lot less now. I remember crying and thinking, I can't make it through this. There was a nurse on each side of me fanning me with a gay pride drag queen fan and telling me that I'm strong and I can do this, and just being so lovely and encouraging. The doctor begins to tell me that I'm going to start to feel a cramping sensation, quotation marks. And I tell you that cramping sensation feels like bloody tidal waves crashing upon a beach. With each contraction, because it's your uterus, because they're scraping the inside of your uterus. Okay. Yeah. So you can Google this, but you probably can't Google it now because they're going to flag you, what the state our government is in. But what it is, they open you up and they take it and they scrape and suck the things out of you. So It's scraping and then it's sucking. And you kind of start to, they say it's contracting. I really felt more like it was like a waterfall or a wave, like water. It wasn't good.
It wasn't like your body trying to reject that or push that away. It was a different sensation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, there's really no words, like even to scriptures. It's just a horse of a different color. Um, with each contraction, I felt even more shame, sadness, anger. I hadn't prayed in years, but I began to pray. I prayed to God to help me get me through this. And while I was praying, I was also laughing at myself because I was like, how ridiculous is this that I am praying to God while committing something that He is so against? And yet here I am just laying out here, just being like, dear Lord, help me. And then because it's funny as well, it's always in times of crisis that we fall back on our spirituality and we call out for something higher than ourselves or God. Um, and as the contractions kept coming, every word of my prayer was leading my thoughts up to the heavens, wherever God is. My nervous system condition, POTS, that's the fun time. It's just pretty much my nervous system gets all wacky and I about pass out. Started to act up and I was like, I'm going to die. And again, thinking to myself, granted, this is all in like the scope of 5 to 10 minutes. And I was like, well, I'm going to die. And this is not how I thought I would die, in the middle of abortion where no one knows where I'm at. Like, what would my parents think if I die? And they're like, your daughter died at a Planned Parenthood. So I began to think about that. And again, I just kept praying. I was like, just make this go over quickly. The nurses again can tell that something's a whirling in my brain, and they try to start making me laugh and try to talk to me to help ease my tension. And eventually, you're going through sensations. I felt like I had cramps. I felt like I had to pee. I felt like I had to poo. My body was shaking. I didn't know where I was. Then eventually it was over and they walk me into the recovery room, and then I should be good to go in like 10 to 15 minutes. Well, I was not good. I was getting so hot, and it was probably like 5 feet from the surgery room to the recovery room. In that time, I had proceeded to take off all my clothes. I had just stripped down. I was naked, just laying in the recovery chair, drinking water. I tried calling Lord Voldemort to tell him I was out of the procedure. He had barely texted me that day. I got no response from him. I wasn't getting better. Because when you have POTS, it can sometimes make recovery a little bit longer when you go through a procedure or something happens, because it's not just like a quick, okay, get my heart rate down. Like you have a whole process. My POTS wasn't getting any better. I was stuck at Planned Parenthood. They were going to close in like 2 hours or so, and I couldn't drive. And so that just fueled all my anxiety. And I was just laying there and I had to do something. So I broke down my guard and I call my best friend. I tell her, hey, do you have some food? And she was like, don't you have food at your house? And I said, I'm not at my house. And I told her where it was. And told her where I was, what had happened. And in 10 minutes, she was there. Did not know this when I called her, but she was watching her partner's kids. So she had to bring the kiddos with her.
Oh, God. Okay.
And as she told me that as they were driving through, the kids were like, is Leslie okay? What's wrong with Leslie? And she was just like, she just has a cut on her stomach. She had to go get it healed. She had to go get it taken care of. And then as they were driving through the protesters, they were asking her why there were mean people outside and where were they going. And she had to tell them that Leslie is at a safe space for women and not everyone wants women to be safe. And these kids were 5 and 7 at the time. So very, very young. And they just
boy or girl or boy and girl?
a boy and a girl.
Okay.
And they had not experienced that. And, I felt when she told me that the kids were there, I felt so guilty that like the kids had to be exposed to that. And, them see these angry people. And why were they angry at me? Like, were they going to hurt me? So she came in, brought me rice cakes, and was like, she wasn't too thrilled that I kept this from her, because she was like, why are you doing this by yourself? And if you ever meet my best friend, she'll be on my podcast. She's super fiery. And she was very much like, I love you, but I'm very mad at you because you don't need to do this by yourself. So she tells me that when I get home, she's going to come back and take care of me and come spend the night with me. So that way I can heal and not be alone. So I ate the food. I started to feel better. She left to go take the kids back. I get better. So I get in my car, drive back to my house. Good thing it was only a 1/4 of a mile away.
Ooh.
But I tell you, that 1/4 of a mile after that second time was not fun.
No.
So I get home. I try to act like everything is normal. I proceeded to walk my dog, and that did not go very well. And so I just laid in the bed and I waited for my bestie to come help me out. I was in so much pain that I couldn't walk. I was having a hard time showering. The cramps didn't go away. Words can't describe those sensations and what I was going through that night. It was just some kind of out of body. I don't even really know. I think because I've kind of shut that off. But I just remember I was crying. I was hysterical. I was so sad. I was embarrassed. My shame had increased. And she just kept telling me that there was nothing to be ashamed of. As we ate PF Chang's, because we treated ourselves to an expensive dinner.
Nice.
She was like, let's get PF Chang's. It's expensive and fancy. And I was like, okay, fine. So we DoorDash PF Chang's, ate a whole bunch of PF Chang's and watched television that night. And as we were doing that, she just kept reassuring me that I made the right choice and that if I had the baby, it would result in even more pain than I was currently in, more pain, more strife, and I would be a single mom. That because I had this abortion, I was still free to live the life that had started to create when I left my husband and chose myself. Fast forward a few months, and even just after that whole ordeal, my world had completely changed. I was not prepared for the aftermath of having 2 abortions. For a while, I had a bout of physical disassociation from my belly button to my hip flexors. I literally could not feel a portion of my body. There's some other term for it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we talked about it in my trauma training. But like, I literally could not feel a part of my body. I am a fitness professional for a living, so there was no rest. I was right back into teaching and being physical, and I couldn't say I can't do this. I could kind of get around by not doing all the exercises, but we were work from home and teaching virtually. So I couldn't fake certain things, like I would if we were in person, where you can get away with not being so physical in person. You can do more coaching. I was physically in pain. I was in an emotional torture. I had no one to talk to about my procedure. I didn't have money for therapy. So I couldn't even go to therapy to help process this.
So where is, you may get to this, I may be jumping the gun. Where's Voldemort in this? Like, is it
Johnson
still like
City.
lukewarm texting, barely?
No, we didn't
Really?
talk. He
Oh,
ghosted me.
oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah. He kind of just
Did I
disappeared out
jump
of my
to a
life.
part that came later? Sorry. I just,
No, he kind of disappeared. Also during this time, I decided to move back home to Johnson City, and I was
yeah,
trying to get him to come over a few more times before I left. He kept making excuses. Should have taken that as an example, as a thing. But you know, when you are stupid and young and you would do anything for someone because anytime you're with them, they make you feel all the things and they tell you what you want to hear and they breadcrumb you and love bomb you. And like, so when you have that on top of also being healing from a traumatic situation, even though like I wanted to leave my husband, I still wasn't fully dealing with the grief of that.
right, right.
I just had a bunch going on in my head.
Yeah,
And you know, and I thought because he was there for me as things in my marriage started to fall apart, and he was being there for me and kind of picked me up. And then he was painting this picture of what life would be like together. You know, of course, you are going to just scrape for every little inch of that.
right.
I kept trying to pursue him, even though the universe was telling me don't, but I didn't listen. Um, but eventually I was so alone and had no one to talk to that I reached out to one of my friends who is a doula. And she gave me some guidance on nutrition, exercises to avoid, exercises to do, and just being someone there for emotional support. Um, as I was going on, let's see, also during the same time, 2, 3 weeks later, I got the Copper Iud, which my body instantly began to reject, which led to its own self set of health problems, which I will be
Right.
talking about in my podcast as well. So I was still healing from my procedures. I had the Copper Iud, which my body was rejecting. I became obsessed with pregnancy tests because I have OCD. So my new obsession became taking pregnancy tests. So even months where I didn't have any sex, I took a pregnancy test. Sometimes multiple times a month. I became so obsessed with never getting pregnant again. Also, why I subjected myself to the Copper IUD. I was like, I will do anything. So all this time, I'm feeling alone. I'm taking all these pregnancy tests. I have no one to talk to. I'm deciding whether or not I want to stay in Winston or if I want to come back home and go to grad school. All of these things, right? And I'm still feeling alone and I'm hurting day in, day out. Yeah, you know, I'm just figuring out how to deal with my abandonment, my life as a divorcee, the what ifs, all of these things. During this time, my cousin becomes pregnant with miracle triplets.
Oh, okay.
I have 2 other friends who also become pregnant during this time as well. But the miracle triplets kind of took me over the edge of something I was not prepared for. So my parents are a-okay with me and my sister choosing to be childless. They support that decision because they believe whether or not you have kids, that's a choice between a husband and a wife. You know, as it is, it should be between 2 married people.
Right.
You know, they
Right.
say husband and wife. I would say married person, married people. Because anyone can get married and anyone can have kids. But so while they're okay with that, I know they would not have been okay if I would have brought a child into the world.
Oh,
So
okay.
because it came at a time where I had just gotten divorced and I would have been pregnant.
Right.
Would not have looked very good. My parents would not have been thrilled. I probably would have been rejected from my family, whether or not I kept the baby or not.
Okay.
Like for my situation, there was no silver lining. And I was damned if I do, damned if I didn't. And yeah, so everyone in the family is elated that my cousin is having these miracle triplets because she lost her first child. So it was really a miracle that she was having 3 kids, which deep down I was very happy for her. That is a miracle, and that is such a wonderful thing. But it was very, very hard for me because everyone in the family was excited. My mom is saying things like, this is the closest I'm ever going to be to being a grandparent. And she would send me the ultrasound pictures of these triplets and all these other things. And when they were born, she would send me things. And like, it was just everywhere in my family were these triplets. And I literally just wanted to scream. I wanted to say so many times to my mom, you were almost a grandmother, and I don't think you would have been a happy grandmother.
Right.
And I wanted to constantly say, I don't want to see or hear anything about these triplets. Because anytime I got something, my heart and body physically ached. Because, well, it's this thing. I didn't want a child. I didn't want it. But sometimes I would have these thoughts of like, well, what would have it been like if I would have had that child?
Right.
Something to hold. How cute would have it been? Like, would have been a little hipster or like, a mini me or like, whatever. And then I sit here and think about, then I'm like, oh wait, it wouldn't be any of that. It would be absolute hell. So made the right decision there. But yeah, so it sometimes was difficult because I did have moments of pain, especially when they were born, like, oh, that kind of would have been, maybe I would have enjoyed having that experience. And still sometimes to this day, I still have, when I see her post things, I sometimes get a little sad, but then I think in the grand scheme of things, that's just a common thing. Of course, someone would be that,
Right.
But I don't ever regret that decision or anything. So I know I made the right one, even though she did reach out to me one time, because I made a comment on my Instagram story about being pro-abortion and being against the Tennessee abortion ban, which she then proceeded to reach out to me and give me a little lecture. And because she was like, her doctor told her that she would have to abort one of her babies and she couldn't imagine not having all 3 of them. And I remember being livid and I was like, but you had a choice. And that's what I'm fighting for.
Right.
And I didn't tell her anything about mine because I was like, I'm not telling no one. But yeah, so that's just always been kind of a sore spot, seeing for months, seeing that, and especially because those triplets would have been born at the same time as my child would have.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So it was very, very painful, and just a lot of sadness and grief that I was having a hard time dealing with because I couldn't really heal from it because it was like almost like I was watching what I would have gone through.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so with all this going on, I just fell deeper and deeper into anger and depression. I was still feeling like a failure. I still felt like I was going to hell. Again, I didn't really have anyone to talk to. So and I moved back home and I'm just swimming. And again, I'm still swimming in the sea of like drowning. And then I started grad school in January and I started therapy because they had a free counseling clinic. And that kind of helped me start the process of healing. It's been a long road to healing, and anyone who is on a grief journey, knows that grief is not always pretty, makes no sense. It's not a straight line, but it's been worth it. I had to really learn how to grieve, not just pretend to grieve. I think like many of us, we had to collectively grieve that year of 2020 and almost like a lost year of our lives. I had to grieve losing my marriage. I had to grieve my abortion. I had to grieve being abandoned by someone that I had loved. I had to grieve my old self because I was becoming a new person. And sometimes you miss those things of your old self. Grief is also hard for us perfectionists because we just want to do it right. And there is no right way to grieve. And you just really have to go with the flow and the motions and be receptive. Mother's Day was hard for me before I had this because when you were in church and you would go to Mother's Day services, they would recognize moms and do special things for moms. And I always thought that was very leave people out and not very nice. Because what if someone really wanted to be a mom and couldn't have one, or people like me who chose to be childless? I was like, just don't do anything. That Mother's Day was really, really hard for me.
I'm not laughing at you. What I was laughing at is Mother's Day is not a religious holiday. It's just a made up day. So
but it's
there's
the church.
No reason to do anything with this.
But it's the church. They love to make every holiday an occasion.
Right.
July is a hard month for me. October is hard, but I just have to keep telling myself that I'm doing okay and just take those emotions as I feel it. One thing that really helped me healing was just to start using the word abortion. For months, I said procedure.
Okay.
I didn't say abortion because it was one of those things that once I started saying it didn't have any power over me.
Right.
It's kind of like when you sit with your feelings and you're getting overwhelmed by feelings. If you say your feeling and you say it out loud and you keep saying it, it starts to lose its power over you and you can go through. That was a therapy tool I learned many, many years ago. It's very helpful. But I had to start doing that with my thing, with healing. I had to say I had an abortion. So I was in therapy and we were processing it. I had to say when I had an abortion, that helped a lot. But just anytime I'm feeling overwhelmed and healing during that time, I would just sit with the feelings, or I would just take a moment to go outside, feel the sun, smell the air, and tell myself that I'm loved and made the right choice. Because if I was chosen to go back in time to that very moment and repeat it again, would you do it? Yes. That's how I know I made the right decision, because I wouldn't change anything about it.
Right.
And I also know that I have a man now who really loves me, and I will bring him up because he was there for me when the other person was not. Because I had met him when I first did Ramblin' Man with you.
Right.
I had just met him. And he was subjected to all that pain and all that anger and all the stuff that I was holding inside, and that he did not need to be subjected to.
Right.
But he was, and still loved me through that, and still holds and supports me through that. So I don't think I really could have made it without him. And also my best friend as well, because she was there for me. Last year, for when it was like the year anniversary of my abortion, she ended up being in town that weekend with me, and it was just really nice to have her support me. And then I think, when I think about my overarching whole process, like this whole story, it's funny, I'm going to somewhat quote a Bible verse. I can't remember where it is in the Bible. I think it's Old Testament somewhere. But as I was typing up this narrative, this Bible verse popped in my head that I used to carry with me in my early recovery days when I was still involved in the church, when I was very early in my eating disorder recovery days. And it was something like, I am stronger now than I once was when I started this journey.
Okay.
And it's funny that, again, I hadn't thought about that Bible verse in 12 years, something like that. But I think that really just encapsulates everything. Going through this taught me how strong I really was. And
I want it. Good Lord. If you ever want, I'm going to make a very awful joke here. If you ever want to not equate it to the Bible, just say it's from Lord of the Rings. We were on a journey, and that's what it's from. It's from Lord of the Rings. You cannot, you can, if you don't want to associate it with the Bible anymore, just say, yeah, this is from Lord of the Rings. Don't you know this quote?
Was that a Frodo thing? I only know Frodo and Bilbo. Is Bilbo one of them?
Bilbo is in The Hobbit. I'm not even that big of a Lord of the Rings. I just know one of them is called An Unexpected Journey. So that's when you say journey, I was like, that could also be a Lord.
I don't know much about. Yeah. I tried to make it through all those Lord of the Ring movies. I know Benedict Cumberbatch is Smaug.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my. If you ever want to give up on the religion aspect of that quote.
Yeah, but so I that's where I have ended my narrative.
Okay.
So yeah, if you have questions, now is the time.
Yeah.
Or anything else? Like, I mean.
No, I'm thinking of, and again, this is going to sound like a joke, but it's not meant as a joke. I'm going to start a side business where you just give me the name of that person, and I'll just go and hurt them for being such an asshole. Like,
well, you don't understand. Like, I have so many friends who wanted to like come after him. So when I told two of my guy friends that were there for me, they were like, I would never leave someone who is going through that. My best friend, good Lord help him. But yeah, so that part, and I bring that in there because sometimes when you're in those relationships that mental warp you, they can sometimes cause a little bit of a brain fog that can make things worse, especially when, I remember when I moved back home, I wanted to be there for him.
Right.
Because I am sure that he was going through things as well.
Right.
It wasn't, I think I definitely have and went through more than he did. And I definitely got the worst end of the bargain, but he was still going through something. And, why wouldn't you want to talk to someone who went through the exact same thing with you?
Right. Right.
So I couldn't be there for him, even as a friend. Like, we were friends and I couldn't even be a friend for him. Like, it was just a complete, like, just dropped me for months.
Sweet Jesus.
And it's like, I just wanted to be there for you to make sure you were okay too. Not at the end of the day, it's like, I still secretly always wanted a relationship with him until I met Tyler. And then that changed. But, and also.
You don't still have any connections with that dude, do you? Please tell me you're not.
So we talk on occasion, but very rarely.
Good Lord. I'm going to find your best friend. I'm going to be like, we need to have an intervention. That dude needs to be cut out and just found broken somewhere.
I think you could have an army of people who would do that for you. But yeah. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, I just desperately just wanted to be there, like even removing the romantic attraction, and then I wanted to be with him. I couldn't even be a friend to him. And I think that also hurt me as well too, because I just needed someone to talk to, and I want to talk to someone who went through it. And I couldn't even talk to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you shouldered the entire burden of, not burden in a negative way, but you shouldered the entire brunt of all of this experience.
Yeah, it was a lot. And
because he didn't communicate, because he didn't do anything, it's all on you, and you're wanting to talk. It's almost like a closure thing, too. It's like, can we deal with this so I can check you off of my list of.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's something else, speaking of closure. And I think, again, anyone who's been in any kind of not so great relationship, something that I've had to learn to deal with, something that Tyler's helped me a lot with, is being okay with the fact that closure never really happened.
Yeah.
I got one half-ass apology a year later.
Was it via text?
It was in person.
Oh, okay. It was in person.
It was the anniversary weekend of my abortion. My best friend was in town. He knew my best friend was in town and he always wanted to meet her. So we had met up and I cried in a bar. Again, not a good look, but I just couldn't help it. But your girl was like crying and three French 75s deep. So it was not a good look. I was not cute, but I was angry and I was sad.
What's a French 75? You lost me there.
Oh, it's one of my favorite drinks. It's sparkling wine, and I like mine with elderflower liqueur, and a lemon twist.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, so crying my eyes out, and I do get one little apology, like, I'm sorry for abandoning you, and then that was it. And I kept
anyway. How about them balls this year? Like,
yeah,
just
it was
completely
pretty much.
on.
And I was just trying so hard to get that closure because I thought that closure would be the bookend of that healing journey and what I needed. And I kept trying to make that closure happen. Anytime we were together, I was so hopeful that like maybe we'll actually talk about it this time. Yeah. This time will be different. Again, anytime I was with him, I was back in that brain set of this is going to be different this time.
Well, the weird thing about closure is I've been saying this for decades, and I still don't know that I have a good handle on exactly what I mean. People don't want to admit that they're assholes. So there are times where people change what they think happened because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. So you may never truly get closure from somebody because in their head they didn't do anything wrong. Or if they did something wrong, it wasn't weighted as much as it actually was.
Yeah. And, like even when I was writing this, I got very angry at him. And I was like, but I didn't let it control me because I was like, it's just an emotion and it's gonna be that way.
Right.
And I've had to just really work really hard on, I will never get the closure that I deserved and needed. But I'm going to have to be okay with it because at least I got some acknowledgement. And if that's all I got, that's more than what I was expecting to get anyways.
Right.
So yeah, it's just a complicated thing when you're in those kind of emotionally unstable, manipulative, love bombing relationships. It's and then you're also dealing with your own shit. Like those two things together, it's a fire. And it's just like, yeah, love bombing can definitely fuck your brain. And and when that world is shattered, you don't know what to do, right? Yeah. I thought I had gotten it right. We were supposed to be together. We've been chasing each other all our entire lives.
Right.
And you tell me all these things I wanted to hear. And then your true colors shone through. Yeah. And that's what happens. But going on to also what you said, I want to do a little plug. You said that like, I just needed someone to talk to and I was bearing a burden all by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know these existed till probably maybe 6 months after my DNC, but it was that I'm an abortion doula.
Oh.
And so for those who aren't familiar, a regular doula is someone who supports you during your pregnancy.
Right.
And they are wonderful and very much needed. They can also advocate for you and they just guide you through this process. Well, an abortion doula is very similar in that they help you through the abortion process, right? So they are there to support you when you're going through this. They can help you drive you to your appointment. They can help you with the aftercare, give you the emotional support that you need when you're going through this time, especially if you're alone. I would have loved to have known that existed.
Right.
Because I was not prepared. They give you that handout at Planned Parenthood of like things you will expect.
Right.
blood clots,
Like I'm trying to think. It's like
cramps.
because
And it's
something.
not just that.
Yeah, after the Supreme Court, it was like Mountain Access Bridge or
Yeah.
something like that. Like
Mhm.
seeing some of those things popped up that I'd never thought of before. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they are. Let me pull them up. So that's something else too. I want to do is have us link to like show notes about places that people can get help or support. Um, because again, like I didn't know any of this stuff existed when I went through
Right.
mine.
Because you were going
And
through it essentially alone. Like, yeah, like you had other things to deal with.
yeah, so it's
Like,
Mountain Area Abortion Doula Collective,
okay,
and they serve Asheville and surrounding areas.
okay,
Um, we can link to them, but yeah, like I would have loved to know that there were people out there who could have guided me,
right,
helped me. I actually have a acquaintance who I'm going to be interviewing on my podcast as well. They are not just a regular pregnancy doula, but they also are an abortion doula and a end of life doula.
okay,
So we're going to be talking about that as well. Because again, there are people like me who did it alone and it fucks you up. And it would have been great to have someone there to been like, take care of you.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Um,
So one of the questions I had
yeah.
was, and some of these questions you've kind of touched on, but I'm going to kind of pull back around to get a little bit more detail on. Like,
Yeah.
and one of them was you talked about how your parents would have reacted
Mm-hmm.
if you had decided to have the baby. Do you feel like with friends you would have had the support and resources you needed if you had decided to have that baby, or
Yes.
yes?
So my best friend even joked that like we would be, she'd be my co-parent.
Okay, okay,
She'd be like, we'd be raising that baby together.
okay,
Um, yes, I even though I didn't tell people, I know if I would have told people, I would have, especially my Winston friends. I had a really fantastic support system
okay,
in Winston. I definitely know I would have had help with the child. I don't know what I would have done financially.
right,
But I know that I would have had some support. It still wouldn't have been an ideal situation. Um, but I do know that when I did tell some of my friends, they were like, why didn't you tell me? I would have like helped you
right,
out. And I was like, I know. And they're like, well, we wouldn't have been like embarrassed or anything, or like, you have nothing to worry about. And I was like, I just didn't feel like it because I just felt
right,
like it would have been a burden. Like, I was just so embarrassed. I was just embarrassed.
right,
And, I wasn't going to tell anyone. I ended up telling my brother-in-law sometime last year. It was right when Texas had the big ruling.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it was like the first thing that started off the whole cascade of events of overturning Roe versus Wade and everything. The Texas abortion ban was like the first one that kind of
Right,
started it
right,
all. And I remember I was living in Tennessee at the time, and I was still very raw from it. And then that happened, and it put me into a very negative headspace. Anytime there's something about it on the news, it takes me back. It's not fun, and it definitely takes me to a place that I have to, again, like I said, be kind to myself, feel the feelings, feel the emotion.
right,
But it also makes me happy that my abortion happened in 2020, because I now I live in a state now. I live in Texas
right,
that like it's horrible. Even if I would have lived in Tennessee, like it's not easy. If it would have happened to me now, it's not a good time.
Well, and it's the weird kind
And
of Big Brother thing about like them tracking people and shit on period tracking apps and
Mm-hmm.
seeing that stuff.
Google searches, anything. Like
I saw a
even if
TikTok the other day that it was some younger dude, and he was like, "You know what I did? I downloaded a period tracking app, and every time I go out to eat, I log it." He's like, "Cause fuck them." Like he was just like, "I think more guys should do this because if they're tracking that stuff, do you know how much that would screw up their system if all of a
yeah.
sudden a bunch of dudes started doing that?"
But
But
yeah, like I told my brother-in-law that I went through that because I was just in a mess because he came to town. And, you know, he was super supportive. Like my brother-in-law and my sister, they're like ride or dies as well.
right,
They're churchy, but they're not like normal churchy.
right,
Um, they live in Charlotte, and he was just like, I hate that you didn't feel like you could call us.
yeah,
Because he was like, me and your sister don't care about that stuff. Like, you know, we're pro-choice, like you you should have called us, and we would have come up, or had you come down and stay with us in Charlotte, get one in Charlotte, or whatever. I'm like, and I was like, yeah, like, but again, I just felt like I couldn't tell anyone.
right.
Even though I know they so would just be like there for me, but you
But
just,
you also didn't expect Voldemort to completely shit the bed either.
yeah, I wasn't expecting a lot of things in this whole
Right,
situation.
right.
um but yeah, so I know one of the questions you had asked was like, anytime does this come on in the news, how does that affect me? You
Well, it
sent me that
was
great
like,
question.
do you remember where you were at when you heard about the Supreme Court's decision?
So I am absolutely horrible. I am always on my phone when I find out about the news.
Oh, no, are you kidding me? I open up Twitter every morning to read the news to see what's
Because
going on.
I
So,
don't have, even when I lived in Tennessee, I didn't have the news.
right.
I do remember, speaking of this, when that female justice for the Supreme Court,
Amy
Coney,
Comey Barrett. Yeah.
yeah, when she was going through her thingy and they were making a big deal about where she stands, and being super duper pro-life. I remember being really triggered by that, and I was living with my parents at the time, and we kind of got into a little heated not argument, a little discourse, little
Right.
discussion, that was not very fun. Most of the time I'm on my phone and I'm on Insta, like the millennial that I am. I find out on that, and then or maybe I was on Facebook and one of the women's groups that I'm in, and someone posted it, and then I did read the political
Right.
article, and then I fact check and everything. But yeah, I just remember, I don't know where I was, probably at home or something,
So
but
I will say I was sitting in this chair facing this direction when January 6th happened because I was sitting here working and I pulled up Facebook and saw something and they're like, I think people are charging the Capitol. And I watched the whole thing for like 5 or 6 hours just play out right here on this computer monitor. So
I was with Lord
I,
Voldemort number 3 when the insurrection happened.
they need to start having Voldemort Winston-Salem, Voldemort Johnson City,
I just
Voldemort.
call them 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, okay,
I've
okay,
had 3 in my life.
okay,
I just call them 1, 2, and 3.
okay. Anyway, sorry. So so it was triggering when you hear it.
Yeah,
Like
because
is it like when somebody like Lindsey Graham gets up there and starts proposing legislature, like does it? But here's my question: is does it bring you down, or or does it make you want to say fuck that dude? We need to fight this shit. Like
a nice little mixture of both.
okay, okay,
Um, it makes me very sad that it has come to this. And that people just can't understand, and a lack of willingness to
right,
understand and hear other people out. Um, I also, when it's an attack on abortion, it's not just on women, because women aren't the only people who have abortions. And that is, so when we're talking about these anti-abortion bans, it's not just women that are affected, like straight women, I should say, straight cis women, that are affected. If you have a uterus and a cervix, it's on you. So it affects more than just people like me. So it's harming to so many people.
It's the whole thing of, I don't know what it's going to take in this world. Well, they'll never want to change this, but it's not pro-choice and pro-life. It's pro-choice and anti-choice. I know that I'm not groundbreaking in saying that sentiment, but it's just this, because marketing PR here, it's not pro-life. It's anti-choice. That's what it is. It's
just, not caring for people. And, so that's what hurts me the most, is that it's just harming thousands of people. And, I think that's the biggest thing. And people who aren't educated aren't talking about it, or, they're assuming things, and people who have all of the knowledge and certain things, are getting shut out, right? Like, in Texas, we have the Lilith Fund, which helps people fund abortions. I mean, there's so many of these resources out there that are getting traction, but they're being also kept like silent. And because we have all this legislature that is keeping people down. So it's just a lot. And, living in Texas is not fun sometimes. But I mean, it's just like Tennessee. I'd have the same thoughts, if I lived in Tennessee and anywhere else. But yeah, so typically I'm usually very, very sad. Well, I'm angry because it's harming people. And, thousands of people, will have something taken away from them, or the option to, right? And then it also sometimes makes me feel a sense of relief that I had mine when I had mine. Like I said earlier, it was so much easier. I literally just drove down the road. I didn't have to worry about people tracking me. And sometimes it's a sense of relief, but I also feel guilty that mine was so easy. I feel a sense of guilt, that, I was able to call 2-3 days later. I was there, right? I could drive myself. I didn't have to worry about getting pulled over. I, didn't have to worry about traveling state lines, or being on a wait list. Like so many places are now, you're on a wait list. And, so sometimes I feel guilty and shameful and like ashamed that, mine was so easy. But then that also just makes me want to raise my voice and, share about the different funds and different people who can help, and that, like, abortion's not a dirty word, and also tell people at the same time, abortions aren't just for cis white women. There are lots of demographics that have a higher, they don't get the care that they need already, and that just puts them down even further. So there's just a lot to unpack. And so that's why it's important, if you have the means to, donate to your funds. There are some funds that do go towards just to help people who are queer, BIPOC, that helps fund those abortions, and it goes just to that. So I think it's important to find, and I have a link in my personal Instagram of all the abortion funds in every state and the different organizations that you can find. I think it's important if you can donate or share those resources. Even if you don't have the means to donate money? Can you share their information in your social media, or just have them? I remember before I left Tennessee, there was some tear off things in some bathrooms I would see around town about free drives to get birth control, or free support for reproductive health. And I would tear those off and, leave them at other places or something, or tack them on other places.
Okay.
But just being aware of what's out there and just sharing that with people sometimes can make the bit of a difference. And like I tell people all the time, just don't be a dick. Just be a nice person, right? Because I know for me, like when I hear people say really mean things about abortion, and I'm like, do you know who you're talking? Like, would you still say that if you knew that was me, if I told you?
Right.
And I think that's something else. A lot of people they're saying things and they're not realizing that their words are harming people. And, like stuff I've heard in my family or in outside friends groups, like people who aren't my super close friends, like things I've heard, and I want to be like, but I know they like me and they're my friend. And I'm like, so if I like, would you still say that if you knew?
No.
And I think that's the thing too. And I remember seeing something on Instagram where someone was like, what was it? Where it was like, if you think you don't know someone who has had an abortion, it's because they chose not to tell you.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because I know so many people who, granted, I know a lot more people who wouldn't be judgy and they would be very loving and kind and supportive. But, when I just think of the other side of I got two halves, but like the other side where I know, like, I hear them say all the judgy shit and mean things. And, they're like, oh, I don't know anyone. I go to church. I've literally heard people say that. I go to church. No one in my church has had an abortion.
This is all something we've heard before when it comes to like the queer community. Mm-hmm. Like how much of this was going on like the 90s and early 2000s. Like somebody would be around, it's same thing. Like somebody, not, you know what I mean though? It's like somebody would be around me if I was gay and would be talking shit because I don't represent as gay. Mm-hmm. If I were.
Yeah, because it's not like you don't always have to tell your story. You're not obligated to tell anyone anything.
No.
Like,
to where they would be dropping the FAGGOTS word and all that other shit, and then it would be like, "Hey, dumbass!" Like I am. Like it's the same. Well, I don't know any. When you're saying that about the church, it's like, well, I don't know any. It's like, well, hell, half your choir is gay. They're just not out. And I
think that's with like anything. Like you never know what someone's gone through. You never know someone's backstory, and people what you choose and what the person elects to tell you.
Right.
Like there's a lot of things I don't tell people, and I don't always expect people to tell me everything about them. And so I may not want to share that part of me and my experience with you because you may not be safe, or I just don't trust you, or I don't think you're pertinent to that because you're not in my inner circle. So it's like that's the whole thing with like me telling this. I've been kind of on the fence about telling my story because now it is out.
Right.
It is out. And I know people will hear this and listen to it. And it's kind of like once it's out, it's out. And it's kind of like, well, now what will happen next?
Right.
It's freeing because now I feel like it's not weighing me down as much as like that final thing where like everything's lifted and I am like, I can breathe a little bit. But then I'm also like, well, what if such and such hears this and listens to it? What if this gets out to my family?
Yeah.
What if this gets out to, Dolly Dinkle down the street? Who knows? Like, talking about how like, you asked if I had if that pregnancy test, my first one, if I was in Johnson City. So when I moved back home, I became obsessed with the pregnancy test. Anytime I would go buy one. And I still lived at home with my parents.
Right.
Because I lived at home with my parents from November of 2020 till like July of 2021. I would go to the drugstore on the opposite side of town. I would drive all the way to the other side of town to go where I didn't think my parents knew anyone. And I would go buy it. And then I would stack other stuff on top of my pregnancy test in the little cart, in the little thing, so no one would see it. And one time I had to buy one at Target, and I was like, oh my God, someone's going to see me. Someone's going to see me. And I was like, so nervous that someone's going to see me with the pregnancy test. Because a lot of my friends lived on that side of town.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I went. And then, I was like, oh my God. But yeah, so I was always very worried anytime I bought a test. I kept them hidden. So what I would do when I was at home with my parents, I hid them away in my closet. And when the time of the month came, I did all the tests. I would do it on Sunday when they were at church, because I didn't go to church.
Yeah.
That's a whole different story. They had to become okay with that. I would do it while they were at church, and then I would stuff it in a bag, which I would put in another bag, which I would put in my trash can, and then take the trash out and then put something else on top of it.
Oh my God. Well, I kind of figured that because I remember Tyler was the keeper of the moonshine.
Yes.
Because you couldn't take the moonshine I brought you to your parents' house.
Yeah.
You had to give it to Tyler.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured that.
But yeah, like it was.
There was a lot of steps involved in keeping pregnancy tests at your house.
Like, and I would just laugh, like looking back at it, like I would just laugh at myself. Like it was like one of those little Russian nesting dolls. I would just stuff and stuff and stuff. And then I would put it in an Ulta bag. At the very, very end, I always put it in an Ulta bag because they're orange and you can't see through them.
Oh, okay.
So my final icing on top was an orange Ulta bag once a month.
Oh my God. Your parents were like, man, you buy a lot of shit at Ulta. It was like, yeah.
I do buy a lot of shit at Ulta, and I don't ever foresee that changing. But yes, I do. It's a coping mechanism that I picked up during 2020, and it has not subsided.
Okay. Do you, in your well, maybe not even friend group, but do you know other women who have had abortions, and have you connected with anyone and reflected on your decisions?
So I know people, but I don't know any personally, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm in a women's group that I joined in North Carolina, and there were some people. Roe versus Wade gets talked a lot about a lot. I remember someone asked a question about who was on the fence about getting an abortion and asked a question, and a few of us chimed in, and I gave my little thing. So I do know people, and I'm going to say I probably know people in my close friend group,
right?
But they are probably like me and not going to elect that information.
Right.
It's like, I would love to one day connect and talk. I have talked to someone on Instagram about it because I opened up a little bit because I posted something, and then one of my followers, we talked about it a little bit. I still think it's one of those things. It's taboo and dirty when it's not, but I still think there's that barrier to talk about it. Or, weeding out, is this a safe person to talk about it?
Right.
Which is, can I trust them?
We live in 2022. Like, I'm not saying you saying that is the dumbest statement ever, but it's just like, I see things that it's like, why is that something women should have to worry about in 2022? Like, with everything else going on, like having to worry if someone is a safe person to talk, like that is just, I feel like I'm not a dumb guy, I think just as a human, it's just like, that shouldn't be a thing. Like, we should be leapfrogs way the hell past that. Like, it's just, I think every once in a while I'm a little too hopeful for humanity. So I'm like, oh wait, no, we should be past this. We should, you know what I mean? Like, am I
Yeah.
spinning in circles here? Like,
So see, I'm different. I'm not a very trusting person, so I automatically assume the worst in most people. And I'm very
oh,
guarded and closed off in private. So I assume that most people aren't safe.
oh, okay.
I also assume that most people aren't super nice.
But
So I think
I
it's a
think it's
little bit
also
different. And
the
also too, I've known, I mean, being a cis white woman, like, I mean, it's been a different kind of experience than most white men.
right,
You know, there are things that unfortunately are natural
yeah,
for some of us that other people don't have to go through. And I think that can also make it hard. And that's not just, that's, with anything, whether it's racial or
right.
sexual orientation, just anything that's, as I always say, if it's not a straight white man thing, then it's,
Well, I will say
you
in my
know,
case, I think it's also I am a large man who is not afraid to be confrontational with people.
mm-hmm.
Even if they are packing a gun, I have stepped up at people, which I'm not patting myself on the back or anything. So there is some shit that it's a hang up for me like that, because it's like, no, it shouldn't be that way.
You're
And
right,
if
it
it,
shouldn't.
and if you have a problem with it, then you can go fuck yourself. Like, it's not your thing. Like, it's, I don't know. We can get into 3 more hours of discussing that.
Yeah, it's just very nuanced. And I think we're just in a
Right.
time where, you know, I know for me, it's just kind of like I I get really sad because I view everyone as creatures of the divine. So I'm going to go back a little bit on my
Okay.
upbringing, but like I believe that so we're all made in God's image, and He is the divine being, or
Okay.
she is a divine being. It is a
They.
divine being, right? And we were all made in that image. So we are all divine, magical creatures, right?
Right.
And it always makes me really sad that we can't see that in each other,
Right.
right? So that's always really, really hard for me, because even though I'm like not super trusting of people, that's just me personally. I'm not going to divulge a lot of stuff to people because I don't want to get hurt. But I just see people as these beautiful, divine, heavenly creatures, and yet we can't treat each other with the kindness and respect and reverence that divine creatures should be. Like we have somehow lost
Or even
that
like
pity.
humanity and decency.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Okay. Good Lord.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Like I said,
so
that's in day 3 of this podcast.
but yeah, so I think it's just important to always just be super mindful of language
Right.
and words you're using, and trying to be supportive where you can. Especially now in this day and age,
Right.
hopefully you have a safe person, someone who will be there for you. Now calls for a little bit more planning, even if you think this could never happen to you,
Right.
you can never be too sure and certain. So I think, now more than ever, it's time to be vigilant. It's time to keep talking about it. It's time to be mindful of our language when we talk about it. Help organizations and so, that do the work. Um, that's where a lot of things happen,
Right.
right? Are those grassroots organizations that do the work.
Okay. So
Um,
we've got a few more questions here. 3
yeah,
of them are the big 3 wrap up ones, but in the time since, like, you've talked about it a little bit, like on certain dates, like July and October, have you felt alone, or that you're carrying some sort of burden, or because, or does it help to have someone like Tyler there or your best friend that are like, hey, you're not alone. We're here for you. Like, how has
Um,
that been?
so um it's interesting because like, your body remembers things. So like sometimes something will trigger me, or like, you know, like the other day, like back in July, my body was doing some weird things, and moving to Texas has been very emotional. And I was just like feeling a little off. And I was like, oh, that's what it would have
Yeah.
been birthday day. Um, but it does help to have someone. I still feel like I'm a burden when I talk about it. I feel like,
That's the big brother in me wanting to fuzz at you and going, no, no, you're not. I'm here.
yeah,
I like you. Hey, Tyler. Hey, man, you're awesome. I'm
yeah,
also here. I'm also here. Like,
I feel really bad sometimes that I just get so emotional on Tyler sometimes. But he does a great job of supporting me and holding me and, holding space for me.
yeah.
Um,
Do you ever feel like you
um,
need to step away and be alone for a minute, just for your own mental health?
I personally, I don't know because
Okay.
I'm alone a lot.
Okay.
Um, but and I always feel somewhat, I'm that weird social person that like is very social, but even if I'm in a group, I still feel alone and
Okay.
disconnected. It's weird. I'm sure other people know what that's like.
Yep.
So I always feel somewhat alone. But sometimes it's nice to have someone. Like I know on the anniversary, the 1 year anniversary last year, I really think if my best friend wouldn't have been there, it would have been a shit show.
Okay.
I also had a dance performance that weekend, so that kind of helped. But it
Okay.
also didn't help because I always stress out when I have a show. There's a running joke that like it's just when it's show day, I'm never calm. I'm never calm, period. But like it's just bad. Like something bad always happens. And so like I was harboring a lot of trauma and tension, and like a lot of things were coming back up. And then I had this performance, and I just remember, being like just feeling all these overwhelmed things. But luckily I had my best friend there because we did talk about it. Because if I wouldn't have had her, it would not have been a good weekend at all. So sometimes it helps to have someone to reach out to. If more so, I feel like instead of carrying the burden of my story, I feel like I'm more of a burden when I still bring it up. And it's
Yeah.
been like 2 years, and
No.
I
No,
still
you're not. No.
have a thing about it, or even like a year into it, I still
Yeah.
would feel like a burden that I couldn't let it go and that I couldn't move on. And I felt like I was annoying Tyler. Um, but again, he'd be like, no,
I'm
you
answering
aren't.
for Tyler here. No. No. No.
But yes, that's one of those things, something it gets easier, but it is nice to have
Yeah.
someone. And sometimes he knows that like when I see something, like we were watching television the other day, we were watching House of Dragon, and is it the first or second episode where have you not seen it? Do I need to?
I have not seen one episode of Game of Thrones, so please spoil away.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't
Well,
care.
the main character, so Viserys's wife goes into labor, and it's not very good.
Oh shit.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so he fast forward the scene
Yeah.
for me. There's been a few times when we've watched things that talks about those things, and he will like cover my eyes or mute it and cover my eyes or fast forward it because he knows that sometimes that will bring something up in me. Or like sometimes even with my family talking about my cousin's triplets, like he knows I will get fired up and he will have to talk me off the ledge.
Now I'm trying to remember. I'm gonna say. Well, I'm wondering if you saw it beforehand. Uh, There's a film that Jenny Slate was in. Well, shit. Why can I not find it? Obvious Child.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Well, it is. Sorry to bring this, but she is a woman who, I think she essentially has a one night stand with a dude, and she has to go she ends up going and getting an abortion. And for a film on the subject, it is a lovely film because it kind of balances a little bit of comedy, but it's also like she's a single woman, and it would have come out before all this happened.
Yeah.
So that's why I was curious.
Yeah. No, I hadn't seen it, but yeah. So
Okay.
it's just a lot. There's just a lot of emotions and feelings. And, I also learned in therapy that it'll be something that will be with me for the rest of my life. And that it's okay that sometimes I will have a pang of a feeling when I see a child, even though I didn't want one. There's something that's also naturally ingrained in us to be parental, even though we don't. Even though those of us who know we don't ever want to be a parent, we still sometimes will have that like
thing. I mean, in those moments, do you think about how your life would have been different for you if you had not had the access to
yes,
the healthcare? I'll call it healthcare. The abortion healthcare.
Well, abortion is healthcare.
Yeah.
But yes, I have thought about it. And it would not be pleasant.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Like, I wouldn't be living how I want to live. I wouldn't be pursuing the things that I'm pursuing and doing. I would be stuck. I would probably, I probably would have had to face the music and gone home, in all honesty. But like I would probably be stuck in small town mediocrity with a child and living at home with my parents and just not being happy. Like there would be, I don't think there would be any joy in my life. I don't think there would be any of the color and like all the things that make what I've always chased in life and how I live my life and I've always lived my life. I don't think any of that would cease to exist anymore. I think I literally would become a shell of who I am. And, there would be lots of resentment. The anger would probably still be there. And I would be dealing with someone who would be not great.
Well, and it's the stuff that people never talk about or think about is all of that imprints on the kid and kind of fucks up their life too.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like, oh, I have this baby and now it's a bundle of joy and we have all this. It's like, man, kids are a lot more intuitive than y'all think, man.
I think there definitely would have been some sort of PMDD.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I don't want to say resentment because I know that child still would have been loved, but it still would have been a lot of extra stress and emotion and a life that I don't think a child deserves, right? I have friends who were products of trying to keep a marriage together.
Yeah.
They were the try to keep a marriage together child, and that did not work. And seeing how that affected them, I think I would have had something similar, a child who would have had one parent that would try to do everything. And I can't say this because this is just all like in my head, but actions and going on past, experiences. And you would have someone who would just be somewhat there when it's convenient for them or to throw money at and use money as power and control.
Okay, let's go out on the.
that's definitely, but yeah, I've thought about it, and it's kind of hard to say that out loud, that you think that that's the kind of life it would be, but that's the kind of life it would be. And I try not to think too much on it.
Yeah. Because you don't, I'm trying to think how to say this. You don't want to feel grateful because you would almost feel guilty for feeling happy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. Never mind. You already got there. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm there. I'm there a lot. Like,
okay.
Yeah. It's like this contradictory thing.
Right.
Like I said in my story, I have felt happy that I've made that choice. And then I also felt at the same time kind of that sadness. Right. So it's a lot to feel. And that's, I think, so what makes it a mental mind fuck is that fight. You feeling both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is that, like, you just don't say, I'm going to get an abortion, right? Like, it's not that easy. There's a lot of a mental thing that goes on, and a lot of that mind game that I think a lot of people don't understand is that it wasn't, even though I knew that's what I wanted and what I needed to do, it was not easy to call Planned Parenthood. It was not easy to get in my car. It was not easy to do any of that.
Right.
And I think that's the thing where a lot of people miss is they think it's just nothing, that people don't care. And I think that's far from the truth. I think, people care a lot.
Right.
It's not just black and white. I don't think anything in life is black and white.
Okay. What is one thing you wish you could get all, and I'm going to use the term men to just generalize, to understand about it? Those without the proper equipment, I guess, is the funny way of putting it. But just,
I just would say those with dicks.
Yeah.
So I actually, when you gave me this question, I talked it over with Tyler because I thought that was the most difficult question to answer. Because I want to say, if you're not willing to get a vasectomy,
right,
or wear a condom, then never have sex.
So there's a lot of women who have updated their dating profile bios to say, do not swipe right if you do not have a vasectomy. Like that, they're going hard in the paint of like, no, this could end up being like, I could get arrested for this shit now. Like,
so that's what I said, because, and I've heard I've heard the excuses about guys not wanting to wear a condom, blah, blah, blah. I've heard that. I have fallen prey to that because I did not feel strong enough in my power to say no to that, and that I have a choice. I've had those experiences, right? Where I didn't feel like I had power to say, no, I'm not going to sleep with you if you won't wear a condom. But now, like, and I should have always had that power and that voice. I wish I would have had that and been more okay with that. So that's what I want to say. Get snipped or put on a condom. And if you can't do either of those, then then just be by yourself. But from a male's perspective, Tyler was very much like, if anything, it needs to be more like I think he said it very beautifully. It's the aftercare that's important. It doesn't stop after the pills or the procedure. You really need to be there afterwards. That's where it's most important. That is like what he believes that men needs to know, that you can pay for it, but that you really need to be there for the person. Again, if you take gender and sex out of it, right? Whoever is having the abortion, the other person needs to be there for them.
And not
More
only,
so,
yeah, and not feel like you're getting off once you drop them off at their house. Like
yeah.
it extends way past that.
Yeah. So that's what he said. So I wanted to, because I asked him, we had a nice little discussion about that. So that's what
I will
he
say, not
thinks.
patting myself on the back or anything, and this is not my place to tell my story, although maybe later on your podcast, I had an instance when I was 18 where I thought I was the father of a child. And so anytime I hear any of my idiot dude friends saying, well, you know, it kind of sucks without a condom, I was like, put that shit on. Put that stop. What are you talking about, man? Like that's the, again, that's another one of those little clicks in my brain is like, that's the dumbest thing. Like that's a path I don't understand.
Yeah. So I think, so that's what I would say. Either just go get yourself off, or, if you,
Nip snip, motherfucker.
yeah. I mean, it's easier for a man to get a vasectomy than it is for a woman to get a tubal.
Yeah.
It's easier for men to get anything. Women will get denied tubals all the time because what if they meet a man? What if they meet someone and decide to get pregnant? Or there's a lot of stories and a lot of threads about that. So do what you can, but be there. Either do that, or if that happens, make sure that you are there for your person afterwards. That's when they really need it the most.
And now let's flip it. What's something you wish you could tell all the women about the process of having an abortion?
That it's okay.
Okay.
And that it's the right choice. Like you're doing what you need to do, and that you are loved, and that you're making one of the most difficult decisions you will ever have to make. And you should be proud of yourself for going through it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but that you'll be okay, and that you are loved, and that you did not make a bad decision, contrary to what the world tells you.
Well, and you may have answered my last question, which is, what is something you wish someone did or said to you during this? Was that some of it?
Yeah. I would have loved to have heard that you're not going to hell. But no, I really would have loved to have someone say to me, you are going to get through this. You made the right choice. And, really had someone, I don't want to say validate, but support and be like, yeah, you did it. You did a hard thing.
Yeah.
And you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
Like, a part of me, I wonder if I can pull it up. Oh, this is a different account. Okay. I did remember I did have like one therapy session with a therapist, and we talked about this, and we did something about making decisions. And he was like, you should be proud that you made a decision about your body that was for you and no one else. Right. It was something along those lines. And that you had courage to take care of yourself. And I think that's very important as well too. That, you're doing a tough thing, and you should be proud of that. Yeah. See, I think oh my God, 2 years worth of Instagram post. Oh, here it is. Nope.
So close.
It was something else. It was really, really close. Is So this one, hold on. It's from a photo shoot. And at this time, I have all these photos from this one shoot, and all of them has a different thing. And I think I'm finally getting there.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I remember I said in therapy, I am a strong person who has the right to feel emotions and make decisions with my best interests and not route them through others.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, that was the theme. That was kind of like a hybrid mix of what my therapist told me to tell myself, and had me say that out loud. And I just thought that was the one therapy session I had. I think, yeah, I had one therapy session during that whole ordeal before I went to grad school. And that was the one thing we talked about, because I had ran out of therapy sessions. My insurance at the time had like 5, and that was like my 5th one. And I was like, well, yay, insurance. But yeah, so I thought that's, I think those words would resonate very well, is that you are a strong person and you make the decisions of your best interest, and you don't have to write them through other people. You don't need other people's approval to make a decision about who you are and your body and what you choose to do.
Yeah.
It's your body. It's your choice. You live your own life. And I think that's the most important.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.